new episode of Mastering Programming. In this episode, you'll learn how to create an app completely from scratch. Now, that app will present to you more than 500 characters from your movies, from your TV shows, superheroes. As you can see, we have Dash, we have Black Lightning, we have A-Bomb, we have every Marvel, every DC comic book character. Even people like Chuck Norris. We have people from Star Wars. Everything you can think of displayed in this app. So it's a pretty cool app. And we're doing this by calling an API file. We're then presenting these images, and even when you click on it, you get presented with much more information. So let's go ahead and get a pretty good example for you. Let's try something like the Fallen one. And as you can see, we get the name, we get all his information, we get what kind of eye color he has, hair color. We can even try get someone else. So let's try Abraxas. And as you can see, we get all this information on him. We can even try get someone like Darth Vader. And as you can see, we get other identities. So we have his name, Lord Vader, we get his relatives, we get information about his height, his strength, his durability. Let's just try one more time just to show you what this app is actually capable of. If I click on Dr. Manhattan, you have more information on him. Get what I mean? So there's a lot of information displayed here. It's a pretty cool app. It's not easy to do, but I'm pretty sure you will love to watch how to do it, and this is something cool that you can show off in front of your friends. Now I will be putting this app on the App Store, so make sure you click the description to actually see it live in the App Store and get to interact with it. Without further ado, let's start this episode. Welcome back, guys. So the first thing we're going to do is obviously straight away launch Xcode, and I'm going to go ahead and click on create a new Xcode project. Make sure you have iOS selected and then app, and let's go ahead and click next. Product name, I will just simply call it Superheroes, and just leave everything else exactly the same. Make sure the interface is SwiftUI, and make sure that the lifecycle is SwiftUI app. Language, make sure it is Swift, and I have unchecked the use core data and the include tests checkboxes, and let's go ahead and click on next. I will pick the desktop as a place to save this, but make sure you save it somewhere you want, and I don't really need a Git repository, so I will uncheck that too. Let's go ahead and click on create. Perfect. Now as soon as this loads up, make sure you go ahead and expand your project. I will be removing the canvas as I will not be needing it, and make sure you have the simulator as iPhone 11 Pro Max or any iPhone you want, but I will be using iPhone 11 Pro Max. Okay, so what we need to do now is first create the other pages or the other SwiftUI files that we will be using. Now for this application, in total, we should be having 3, the content view, the hero view, and the hero form. And I'll be explaining exactly what each of them does. So let's go ahead and create that. I'll right click on content view, I'll click on new file. Make sure you have SwiftUI view selected and then next. And this, as I said, I will be calling it hero view, and I'll click on create. Perfect. Let's go ahead and click on new file, and this time again SwiftUI view and click on next, and for this time I'm going to click on hero form. Perfect. Okay, so now we have 3 overall files. Let's go back to our content view, and all we're going to be displaying here is actually the hero view. So I'm going to go ahead and say hero view. Perfect. Now, all the tough work, all the main work is going to be happening inside of our hero view. That's when we're going to be calling the API file and getting all the information about the heroes. And this is where we're going to display all the information too. At the same time, the hero form is the file where we're actually going to have the detailed information about our superhero. Let's go ahead and jump back into our hero form. Jump back into our hero view, sorry. And actually, before we can even continue, we first need some libraries that will help us achieve this project. Now, let me just show you something real quick. So basically what we're going to be creating at this, right now, is this view that you're seeing in front of you. The title of the app, which is Super HQ, the total characters that we have, which will not be 700, it will be something around 500, and then a list of our superheroes or characters with a photo, title, and their full name. But in order to be able to use images extracted from the internet in SwiftUI, and also in order to be able to parse our API file, which is that one, we need 2 different libraries. In order to work with images, we need to go to this library over here or this package. I will leave a link in the description, and then click on code. Make sure you copy this into your clipboard. Let's go back to our project. Click on your project name over here. We're going to jump down to frameworks, libraries, and embedded contents, and I'm going to click on the plus button. Click on add package dependency, and I'm going to paste that URL. I will then click next and make sure it verifies all the way until the end. I will leave this exactly as it is, and then I'll click on next. Once that's done, we're also going to be getting our JSON parser library, and this will allow us to parse the JSON formatted files. And this will contain all of our character heroes, all of the images, everything we need pretty much. So let's just go back quickly while that's loading, and I'm going to come over here, and again, this is the URL. I'll leave it in the description. Same thing exactly. I'll click on code, I'll copy this, and let's go back to our file. As you can see, this was added. I'll click finish, and then I'll add the other one. So I'll simply click on plus, I'll paste the URL, and sorry, I forgot we meant to click on add other and then add package dependency. I'll paste the URL over here, and I will click on next. Again, same thing, let it verify pretty quickly. Version, yeah, leave everything the same, and I will click on next. Now we're actually good to go, and we can start working straight away. So before I continue, maybe a good idea will be to minimize this project, put it somewhere over here, bring this like that. Maybe we can make this a little bit smaller, it doesn't matter, and make this one a little bit bigger. And let's try get the exact same sort of look that we have over here. Let's jump back to our hero view, and remember, all the heavy work is going to happen in this file. And the first thing I need to do is remove this text, add a Z stack, and as you can see, we have that the color here is blue. So obviously, straight away, the first thing that we're going to do is add the same background color. I'll simply type in color.blue edges, ignoring safe area. And what that will do is it will allow us to add colors all the way to the end of the screen. Now you might be saying, well, how come this is white? Well, that's because we're going to be adding a list. And when we add a list, it goes on top of that background color, so it actually removes it. What we then need is a VStack, just like this. And inside of the VStack, we're going to have two texts. So let's quickly just add one text, second text. Inside that first one, as you can see here, we have superhero HQ. So inside of here, obviously I'll come and I'll say super HQ. And in the second one, what we need is total characters. And as I said, we will only start with 500. Now, obviously, there are some things here to note. As you can see, this is white, and it's also, this one's bigger and this one's smaller. So all we need to do is simply come over here, and we're going to say font. And inside of here, I'll say large title. After that, I'll simply say bold. We will leave this exactly the same. Now, as you can see, this is white, but at the moment, if I run this, and I'll just continue, if I run it, it will actually show me a black text. How to fix this? Well, we can add another VStack, just like that. We'll copy everything inside of this in here. Let's Command A and then Control I to refactor everything. And what we can do is we can come over here, we can say .4ground color.white. And this will make any text inside of this VStack have the color white. And once this loads, you'll be able to see that it's actually black, and then we'll run it again and you'll see that it is white. Let's keep going and actually create our list. So at the moment, because we don't actually have any information, we can only fill our list with static data or like hard-coded data, and I will do that just for now. So let's go ahead, see where this VStack ends, and we're going to create a list. Okay, so it's loading. We're going to create a list right here. And for now, just for now, I'll simply say 10 and I'll say text. Oops, sorry. Okay, so as you can see right now, it's black, and this just needs to be something like this. And if I go ahead and run it again, Okay, let's do the changes. And actually, let's go ahead and say something like I in, and then maybe we can also print I just to give you understanding of how this works. And if I run this now, you realize that the superhero HQ changes into white. Same thing for the total characters, and at the same time you have a list added underneath. So let's go ahead and move this. There we go. As you can see, it looks identical, exactly the same as we have it in this image to our right. The only thing we're missing, obviously, right now is to actually add the list and make sure it's exactly the same. Now, just something to note: the I here is actually displayed here on our right side. Oh my god, that's just a mess. As you can see, it's displayed on our right side as 0, 1, 2, so we're just counting the I, but that's not important. I just wanted to tell you how this works. Now, let's start by actually grabbing that information that I'm talking about. So the first thing I will do is I will import the libraries that we just, or the modules that we just imported into our app here, and I'll say Swifty JSON, that's the name of one of them. And then the second one is import SD web image. Make sure you select SwiftUI and not the first one. There we go. After that, what we need is another struct file. And I will simply, now again, just to confirm, you can actually create everything within the same struct, but let's make sure we write clean and nice code. So I'm going to be creating multiple structs. I'll simply say struct and I'll say hero bar. Now this hero bar is pretty much just this bar, which contains the image and the name and the full name of the character that we want. I'm just going to expand this for now. So I'm going to say hero bar. I will then say view. And let's go ahead and create a var body. Side of here, we're going to say some view. And the I is not meant to be a capital. Now, obviously, we will still get a whole bunch of errors. All we need to do to just dismiss it for now is create a H stack and maybe just a text just for now, just to avoid the errors. And this should actually dismiss the errors. Let's see. There we go. Cool. So before I continue, I'm just going to make some space here, and we're going to start by creating some of our state properties, such as a name. Because obviously, as you can see, we're displaying the name, we're displaying an image, we're displaying a full name. So let's go ahead, var name. Also, we need an ID, and I'll show you exactly what this ID refers to in a second. After that, we also need an image. So var image. Let's obviously add the full name. And there is something else that we need to add. So in the application, when I was demoing it to you, when you click on them, another detailed page appears. And we are actually asked or call it to appear inside of this struct over here. Obviously, it's telling me that I did an error here, so let's just fix that. And to do that, we are going to first be creating a Boolean variable called present. And every single time that changes to true, we're going to be presenting the detailed view. So pretty much every single time someone presses on one of these list rows, this is going to change to true, and we're going to be presented with the detailed view of the hero. Let's move forward. So we have a H stack, and obviously instead of the H stack, let's remove this. As you can see, we have an image and some text. So let's do that. I'm going to be calling an animated image. I'm going to make sure that it is with a URL. Now for the URL, I'll simply pass in URL. URL, and it should be string. There we go. And for now, just pass in the image. There we go. And I'll explain everything in just a second. After that, just say resizable, just to make sure that the image is actually small enough. Dot frame. We're going to add a width of 80, a height of 80. Ignore the alignment completely, so let's just remove it. And just to give you an idea on what we're doing right now, we're just working on customizing this image to fit exactly as it is appearing right now. After that, what we can do is we can say dot clip shape. Now we obviously want it to be a circle, just exactly as it is, and I'll say circle, open and close a bracket. Cool. So we created that already. Now what's missing? What's missing is just that v-stack of the name and the full name, or the actual name of the character. So we're going to do a space, and then we're going to be adding a v-stack. And inside of that v-stack, we're going to be adding two separate texts. Let's just add one, and let's add the second. Now this text here, it will be the name of the character. And I want it to again have a font of a title, not a large title, but just a title. And let's also make it bold. Cool. And the second one, we are going to be adding a full name. And we can actually just make it into give it a font of a body. And I think we need a dot over here. There we go. That works. And if I run this, nothing's going to happen, obviously, because we're not calling it. But basically, we basically just created that view that you're seeing right in front of you. But obviously, we don't have the information to fill it. Let's move on. And what I will do now is I will create the tap gesture so that every single time someone taps on any of these rows, we have that detailed view. So I'm going to go ahead and I will say dot on tap gesture. Obviously you can see, oops, sorry for that, on tap gesture, and I actually don't need this, so I will be removing it. And I will be removing this as well, and that as well. I'm not too sure why Swift decided to add it. What we need to do is, like I said before, we're going to be changing that present from false to true. So all we need to do is simply say dot toggle. And every single time we do that, we're going to be presenting a sheet. And let me just write that again. Dot sheet, and let me make sure you select the second one, is presented. Now, is presented true or false? Again, we're going to be depending on that one. So all I'll be doing is I'll be removing this placeholder, and I'll give a $sign, and then I'll present. And that means that it is presented. At the moment, it's false, but once we click on it, we're going to toggle it, so it will be true, so this will be presented. Kind of makes sense. All right. Now, what are we actually going to be presenting? We are going to be presenting the hero form struct, and we'll get back to that in a second, but for now, we can just say hero form and open and close a bracket. Perfect. So are we done? In terms of the main UI for the main page, yes, but now let's actually populate this information. Let's populate these views with some real information. So all I'm going to do right now, I'll create a struct, and this one is actually going to be called superhero info, and make sure you give it an identifiable property. And inside of here, we're going to be filling ID, name, full name, and image. So this is going to be the struct responsible for that list that you're seeing right in front of you. All I'll do is just populate it with that. So ID, it will be a string, var name, and that will also be a string. Everything inside of here will be a string, actually. Var full name, again, string, and var image is going to be string as well. Cool. Let's give it a second, and this error should go away. And now what we're going to be creating is a class, and that class we will use to actually get the information. So I'll say class, I'll say info, and I'll say observable object. Make sure you select observable object and not observed object. I'll click space, enter, and now we have our class. Now let's create a published property over here, and I'll say var infos, and let's go ahead and fill this superhero info struct with the information. So I'll say super, and it is not filling, superheroes info. Yep, that's what I called it. Open and close a normal bracket after. And when we say publish, that means that any changes here, we can actually access it to anything that's listening. We're publishing this to any struct, and we can listen to it by simply doing some work over here. Anyway, that's not important right now. What we will then do is the following. Let's go over our, let me just show you. So I'll be creating another function, and I'll say func get names, or actually we should be calling this get heroes. And what this function will do is it will actually have a for loop for I in 1 dot 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 500 get hero, and over here I'll say ID, and I will do this, and over here I'll pass I. Now obviously this get hero function is not yet created, so we will create it straight away. But basically what I'm doing is I will be calling this function the get hero, and I'll be passing a number 1 to 500 every single time. So let me just elaborate and explain why I'm doing this. If we go to our API file over here and then go to characters ID, you'll see that we have a full list, 1 all the way to 731 characters. Obviously for this app, we said we're going to go to 500 only. So just over here. So that's still a whole bunch of characters. But at the moment, what we need to do is every single time we're calling this API, we need to pass the ID for that character that we're after. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing here. This function called getHero is going to be calling or looking for the ID, and I'm passing the ID 1 to 500 every single time I call it. Let's move on, and I'll show you exactly why this is actually useful. Now, the first thing I'll do is obviously create that get heroes function. Heroes. And I will be passing a parameter here. It will be called ID. And it will be of type string. And now we should actually get rid of this. Oh, sorry. Find get heroes. This should be hero. There we go. And now we should actually get rid of this error. And let's go ahead and do this. So I'll say let source, and this will be the source. So this will be the URL for our character, like the link, the URL. And basically what I will do, actually, let me just show you a real quick example. Now I have it saved over here, and I will show you exactly what I mean. Let's go back. Let's open a new tab, and I'll click paste. And inside of here, instead of ID, I will say 644. Now, this is an ID for a character. And as you can see, this is for Superman, and we get all this information. So that's exactly what we want to do. We want to get this information from 0 all the way to 500. So let's go back, and actually let's paste our URL over here. And as you can see, so this will be called 500 times. Every single time we're going to be replacing the ID with 1 to 500. So we will be calling different things. Now this number over here, this is actually my access key for, or like access token for this API. Do not try to use it, it will not work, but this is mine, and this is what allows me to call the API. You can very easily go back over here, and let me just show you how to get your own, and say continue with Facebook, and you will get your access token as well, which will allow you to use this API file. So anyway, we're creating a URL for each character. What we then need to do is actually use that source. So I will say let URL equal to URL, and I will say string, and I will be passing my source as my URL. Now, if you're having issues understanding what's happening here, we're pretty much calling an API file and then parsing it, and I've made a complete, really nice video explaining exactly how to do that. I'll make sure I link that in the description so you can get some details on it. And let's keep moving. I will then open up a session by saying let session equal to URL session, open and close a bracket. Make sure you select configuration, and we just want it to be a default configuration. After that, what I will do is I'll create another, or use that session that we just opened, and I'll say data task, and it says with, and obviously which URL? Well, we're going to be using that URL that we just created at the top. Let's go ahead and open and close a zigzaggy bracket. Inside of here, I'll be passing that data. And then we don't actually need anything here, and we will be getting an error. And let's just check real quick if we do actually have an error. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm checking if error is not equal to nil, then print out the error because it means we have it. If it's not equal to nil, we'll simply say error dot, oops, sorry for that, error dot localize description. Else, actually we don't need to write an else. And then what we can do, so if we don't actually have an error, what we can do is we can save everything we receive from the API file in an object called JSON. And I will say try because we're not sure, maybe something will happen wrong. And now we're using that library that we imported. I will say JSON and I will say data. And then again data. Force unwrapper, we know we have it, we just created it at the top. And I'll say options and say dot allow fragments. Now, it just says he sacrifices that the parser should allow top level objects that are not an instance of NS array or NS dictionary. Now, because we're using or getting a lot of information, sometimes we just don't guarantee what we could be getting. So this will pretty much just allow us to like avoid some errors. But I won't get into much details on what that does. After that, in order to actually give this information or like publish it outside of this function, what we need is a dispatch queue. So I'll say dispatch, I'll then say queue, I'll then say main and async. And now what we can do is we can actually append to this struct over here. All I will be doing is I will say self.infos.append, and inside of here we're going to be saying superhero info, open and close a bracket, and as you can see we just filled all our parameters right now. Now for ID, and let me actually just load something for you. So we need the ID, we need the name, we need, what else did we say we need? We're going to be needing the image, and we also need the full name. So let's go ahead and I'll show you exactly how this gets done. For ID, all I need to do is simply obviously remove this, and let's just put everything inside a string to avoid like any errors. And what I will say is I will call that JSON object that I created over here, and I will pass in ID. So why did I do that? Well, we have this object and it's called JSON, and inside of it there's something called ID, as you can see. And let me just zoom in. As you can see, we have ID over here. So every single time you call the name, you will get the result. This is pretty much very similar to a dictionary. It's a JSON formatted file. Look into it, it's really useful. And what else do we need? So we need to have the name. So let's go back, and for name, I will simply, let's just go ahead and copy this. Let's highlight this. And instead of ID, let's pass name, full name. Now this will actually be a little bit tricky. For now, I'll just pass this to avoid any errors. But let me show you why this will be tricky. So we have everything here. And then we have parastats, and then we have biography. And inside of biography, we actually have all these options. So when I'm trying to get the full name, first I have to reference biography, and then I have to reference full name. And let me just show you how to do that. It's much simpler than I made it sound. I will simply type in biography over here. I hope I'm spelling things correctly. Open another and small bracket, and I'll say full. And I can't remember how it was written, full slash or dash name. Perfect. And this will give me my full name. Lastly, we need the image. Let's go ahead and remove this, and let's just double check where it is saved. So as you can see, it's just completely on its own. And let's just, okay, so it seems like it is on its own. So I can simply just say image and then request the URL. So let's go back. And what I will do is I will say, I'll open and close the bracket, and I will call JSON. Oh, sorry, JSON. Inside of the first one, we're going to be saying image. Inside of the second one, we're going to be saying URL. Okay, cool. So right now, let's just give it a second, see if we're getting any errors. And as you can see, we are not. If we run this right now, nothing is going to happen. And that's because we haven't actually resumed our session. So let's go to this bracket. Now, I'll show you exactly which one again. So this one, so everything from here to there, and we're going to go to that one, and we're going to say dot resume. And this will allow us to start our session. So right now we are actually populating this with information. And now let's actually do the coolest thing here and actually present it inside of our list. Let's go over here and we are going to create an observed object. So just like this. Oops, sorry. Observed object var, and I will say super heroes, and I will say info, just like this. And what I will do is I will go to the list, and instead of having 0 to 10, what I'll have here is super heroes dot infos, sorry, dot infos, there we go, I in. And now look at this. Now I'll just show you a really quick example of what this can do. So let's just say I put text, and inside of here, if I put I and then say dot, we can actually get any information we want. So I will say name, for example. And if we run this right now, actually, let me just show you. So if I go ahead and run it, nothing is being presented. So why is nothing being presented? Well, in this class, as you can see, we're not actually calling this function. So we first need to call these functions. Let's go back over here. And what I will do is I'll say dot on api. Inside of here, I will say perform. And I will perform self dot, we can reference back to our superheroes here class, and we can say get heroes. And now if I run this and click yep, let's go ahead and see what will happen. Perfect. So as you can see, we do get a whole list of names, and these are all the names from 0 to 500 characters. We've got Aquaman, Blizzard, Batman, Ardina, everything. Now all we need to do is now transform this list of names to this list of characters. Let's get back. And remember, we already created this. That's the cool thing. We created this view over here. Remember the hero bar. So we don't need to do a whole bunch of things. All we need to do is simply say HeroBar, and we're going to open and go here. And name, all I will do is I will say I dot name. For the ID, I will say I dot ID. Image, let's go ahead and say I dot image. Full name, I dot full name. And we don't actually need this. This will be changed inside of our struct. Let's go ahead and save this, and I'm actually pretty excited. Let's go ahead and save and run this and see what will actually happen. Okay, wonderful. As you can see, everything is fully loaded up. You've got your images, you've got your names, you've got everything written perfectly. Even the images are loaded perfectly. But one thing I can't help but just, get completely annoyed from is that the names are not aligned. As you can see, everything starts at the beginning of the line, and we need that exactly the same. So let's go back. Let's go to our VStack over here. Open and close a bracket. And what we need to do is add alignment. And I am going to say dot leading. And sorry, give me a second. It seems like Xcode is playing around with me. Alignment. And we can simply say dot leading. And if I run it, nothing actually happens. As you can see, it's too bad. So let's go ahead and try copy this. Instead, put it over here in the bigger VStack. And let's go ahead and run this and see if this will work this time. Okay, so it's still not working. And it seems like there is something wrong here. So let's go and actually try and understand why this is happening. Okay, so I just realized exactly what we're doing wrong. We were trying to fix the text over here, but that's not actually what's being changed. What we need to change is the text over here. So again, I will do this. And now if I run this and go back, finally, we will realize that it gets fixed. Let's cross our fingers and wait and see what happens. Perfect. As you can see, it works perfectly, exactly as we expect it to work. Everything is exactly leading towards the left side. Now, what happens if you click on it? Well, let's see. We click on it and we do open that file, but obviously we don't get the detailed information out of it. So let's go ahead and see how to do that. Okay, so in order to get that complicated struct with all the information and all like the detailed view, what we first need to do is we need to create another struct containing very similar information to this, but the full list. Now, in order to just save time and not waste your time, I already created this and I will paste it here and you'll see exactly what we have. So we pretty much have the detail, I called it detailed info. And it's exactly the same as this, but it just has much more stuff such as intelligence, strength, durability, speed, power, combat alliances, all this stuff. So it pretty much takes the most important like information from here and we are going to be using it. Now we're going to be creating a different function for this. Let's go ahead into this one and we're just going to create another function and we will call it func get hero, and I'll just say D for detailed. And again, we're going to be needing an ID and we're going to be needing a string. And we're just pretty much going to do the exact same thing, except we're going to be adding much more details. And this will only be called when something gets tapped. When a row gets tapped. Where is it? Yep, when a row gets tapped. So let's go ahead and do that. All we need to do is, again, we need the source. So I'll say let source, and this is actually exactly the same as the first one. So I'm going to be copying it. In fact, let's go ahead and actually copy everything inside of here, just like this. And we'll be passing it like that. And let's go ahead and select everything by pressing Command A and then Control I just to reformat things. And we obviously need another reference to this struct. So I'm gonna come over here and I'll say at published var, and maybe this one we can probably call it something like detailed or detailed. And again, we will say detailed info, open and close a normal bracket. And this time, instead of appending to this, what we will be appending to is, instead of appending to the superhero info, what we'll be appending to is the detailed. So I will simply copy all of this stuff. Now say self dot detailed dot append, and the new element, it will be a new element of the detailed info. Open, and all of a sudden we've got all this stuff. Now, instead of just wasting your time and entering everything right now like manually, I've already created it. So I will again just copy it and I will paste it right in front of you. And all I did, alright, I know, looks scary, but all I did is pretty much I used the exact same method I used over here to fill everything up. For example, right now we have work and base. Let's go over here. All I did was I looked for, I looked for work. There you go. And then occupation or base, and that's how I got Metropolis for he. So that's pretty much what I did, but I just did it for everything inside of our struct over here. Now, okay, so we pretty much have this, but what actually happens when we need to fill it up? How do we actually fill this up in our detailed view? Well, let's go back to our hero form, and what I will do is I will go to my hero form actually, and what we need over here is we first need to create a var image for our image. We then need to create a var ID. We need to create, state var colors. And here I'm going to fill in color dot purple. And this is pretty much the view that appears every single time you click on one. It should be a completely different view. So I'll say color purple, and then color dot orange, and then color dot green, and let's just make it out of 3 colors. Now, just like in our hero form, we had to reference it by using an observed object, we're going to do the exact same thing, except this time we're just going to refer to the detailed rather than the info. So let's go here, and I'll actually open this just to make things easier. And let's go to our hero view. and we just need to reference detailed right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'll create an observed object. I'll say at observed object var superhero, and I will say info, just like this. Perfect. Now, and this is a little bit, it's going to be a little bit of a complicated file. All we need to do is just start with a Z stack. Let's just try keep it simple, just like this. And I will say colors dot random elements. So let's get a random color here and assign it to the background. And I will say edges, ignore safe area. I'll say all. And once this happens, sorry, I just realized I did a mistake. So this should have been a dot instead of a comma. And I will say dot on appear perform, and we can probably just go ahead and close this, and I'll open and close a bracket like this, perform, and what we want this perform is super. Let's just reference our superhero class and then say get hero with the D, and for ID we're going to be passing the ID that we have over here. So I'll simply say slash self.id. Perfect. So now we have a way of referencing the ID, and after that we can probably just continue with creating our actual view. So I'm going to start by creating a scroll view. Obviously we're going to be displaying a lot of content and we want to be able to display it throughout the screen. So I'll start by scroll view. I will then start by creating a VStack, and let's go ahead and start by adding the image. So the first thing I want to do is have an animated. Oh, we forgot to actually import our SwiftUI SDWeb SwiftUI, so I'll just simply come here and do it. Let's go ahead and write it from the beginning. So I'll say animated image URL, and it's very similar to what we already did. And I'll create URL with a string, and that string will be of the image. I'll say dot resizable dot frame, and inside of here I will be passing a width, and the width will be of 350, the height will be 350, and let's just to make things fancy, let's just add a corner radius of 12, so just to have the image, you know, with a little bit of a corner radius. All right, let's go ahead and run this. Actually, if we run this right now, nothing is actually going to happen, and that's because we still haven't passed the image or the ID. So let's go ahead, open this file. I'm gonna go ahead and select hero view, and just when we're calling the hero form, so over here, let's actually pass at the same time, let's pass the image, and over here I'll just say image, and the ID, I will pass the ID, and I can get rid of this stuff. Perfect. So let's save this, let's run it, and let's see what actually happens. Okay, so the app just loaded, and if I right now if I click on any of them, as you can see we do have an image loaded up, and if I can click on any of them, as you can see we do have the images get loaded up pretty well at a decent, you know, resolution, so we can go ahead and play with that. Let's go back and actually display the rest of the information. So for now what we need to do is we need to create, so let's just go ahead and close this, we no longer need it. And what I will do is I will start by creating a for each statement. So for each, so now we're no longer using a list. I'll say for each, and I'll say for superhero.detailed. Very similar to a list though. And we're going to open and close a bracket. And over here I will say I in. Perfect. And now what we can do is we can create another VStack, and there will be so many VStacks right now, so please, you know, heads up. And inside of here we're going to be setting up the alignment, and I'll say dot leading. Perfect. And again we will be doing the same thing, so I'll simply say VStack, and I will say alignment. And by the way, by no means am I saying that this is the best way to do whatever I'm trying to achieve here, but it is the way that I found it easier. So if you have a different way of doing it, please let us know so we can all benefit. And we will start by adding a text, and inside of that text we will be adding the name, the normal name, for example like Superman, not Clark Kent or whatever. inside of our view, just so people know exactly who it is. And we're pretty much creating like detailed information of the character. I.name, and after that, I'll give it a font, and that font should be of large title. At the same time, I'll give it a font weight of being bold. And we're going to be adding another text, and this will be the full name. So I will simply say I dot full name, and we know we don't need to give this anything, and let's just go ahead and add a padding. After that, we're going to be creating a scroll view, and let's just come over here, and we will be creating scroll view, and this will be a horizontal scroll view, and this will pretty much show um the stats of the character, so like the durability, power, combat, whatever. And I think I'm spelling something incorrectly. Horizontal. Now that looks fine. Let's go ahead and open and close the bracket. And to make this actually work as we want it, we have to add another H stack, and then we're going to be adding a V stack. Again, alignment. This time is actually going to be center. Alignment dot center. And again, align. Oh, yep, spelling mistake. I knew it was coming. There we go. Alignment center. And right now we're going to start by having the intelligence as the first thing. So I'll add a text and I will say intelligence. And we are going to give this a font weight of bold. And I have no idea what most of the other things that show up actually mean. So that's why I'm using this text. And then we are going to be adding the actual intelligence. So let's go ahead and say I dot intelligence. All right, just as a just as a test, let's see if this works. But first, let's just give it a border, and I will give that border a color of black. So let's go ahead and run this and see what will happen, and hopefully we don't crash at all. Okay, so the app just loaded. Let's just give it a second to load the rest of the characters. And if I click on Agent 13, for example, we should expect perfect. We should expect to see, as you can see, we have the name and we have the intelligence, which is actually not so bad example. Let's try someone like Abraxas, intelligence 88. Cool. Obviously, we're going to make this look much better, but give us a second. What we can do is we can then actually start by creating, since we're going to have, so we have, let's see, we have intelligence, we have strength, we have speed, durability, power, and combat. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's go ahead and copy this 6 times. Yes, you guessed it correctly. And I'll do that by, we already have 1, this is 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 it was. Let's just fix everything. Obviously, for the second one, instead of intelligence, what we can add is strength. Strength. And let's call this strength. There we go. So Xcode is going to start, lagging on us, but we should remember the names. Now intelligence, instead of intelligence, let's add durability, and let's remove this and say durability. I think after durability we had power, so let's go ahead and add power. Not iPower, just power. And here we're going to say I.power. And okay, I think it was just small case. Over here, we can add the speed. And let's just remove this and say speed. For intelligence, sorry, for the last one, it is actually combat. Let's just double check. It will be combat and I dot. Let's make sure it's actually written correctly. Oh, now you decide to come. And if you go ahead and run it, let's see what we actually get. Okay, so we've got everything running. Again, let's just give it a second. And if I click on abomination, for example. Okay, maybe not abomination. Let's try someone else. Let's Abraxas again. As you can see, we get a full list of intelligence, strength, durability, power, speed, and combat. So we're getting something. This is exactly what we actually need to collect, but there is something and it just looks ugly. And again, I'll take care of that later towards the end. Let's go to our scroll view over here and let's see where it ends. So it ends over here. And first, let's actually just make the foreground color dot white. And at the same time, I just can't help but add a padding, just like this. Let's also come over here and I will say dot background and I will give it a color dot red. Now, if I run this, it might actually look a little bit, you know, not how you'd expect it to be. But at the end of this tutorial, this app should look much better than you expected. Perfect. So as you can see, it does add that red color to it. But let's continue working and making sure it actually looks much better than this. I will simply go back and maybe we can just minimize this. And in fact, let's just minimize that scroll view. And after the background red, we can add another VStack. And this time it will have an alignment, you guessed it, of dot leading, open and close a bracket. All right, we've got no errors so far. Now after that, let's add another VStack. Again, alignment will be dot leading. We don't need any of this stuff that Xcode just loves to generate for us. There we go. And inside of here, we're going to have two texts. A, that is the race of the character. So is he a human? Is he an alien? What is he? And let's just go ahead and do that by say I.from. That's what I called it. And what we can do is we can add a font. This should be a large title. We should also make it font weight. We should make it a bold. And after that, let's add another text. And this time it will be the gender. So I will simply just add gender. And it should be I.gender. Perfect. Again, let's add a padding just to make sure things are looking good. And after that, what we can then do is we can add another scroll view. So I'll simply say scroll view. There we go. And this will be another horizontal one. So I'll say he dot horizontal. Perfect. And let's just make this, give this probably a background of blue. So let's go right underneath it. And I will say dot background color dot blue. Perfect. And inside of here, we're going to be adding some information like the height, the so just like the height, the weight, just very simple stuff like that. Now, to avoid just wasting time, let's go ahead and copy one of these, just like that. And then let's go ahead and close this again. All right, so we can come over here and we have our scroll view. We first need to add a H stack. And then I will start by adding my first VStack inside of this. Let's highlight everything, Control I. I'm not sure if we're getting an error of this or if Xcode is just lagging at the moment, but what we can do is we can click on Clean Build Project. Yes. Okay, it seems like Xcode is just lagging, but we can go ahead and continue. We know exactly what we're going to be doing. Now, instead of having intelligence, over here, what we can add is height. And for the text, I will simply be adding height. Perfect. Let's run this and see how we're going. Okay, so you can tell here that the app finally loaded, and if I click on Godzilla, for example, we can see all his intelligence, his speed, combat, we can see his race, we can also see his height. He's huge, he's 108 meters or whatever this is. And let's go ahead and select like the flash, for example, and we can see that he's normally, like, he has a normal height, which is 157 centimeters, and you can also see in inches. Let's go ahead and add more stuff. So over here we actually have access to the height, we have weight, eye color, everything related to that person pretty much. So let's go ahead and continue doing that. I will come over here and I will copy this one, two. Let's just double check. We have height, that's one, two, three, four. Okay. So I have here, I have one, we have two, we have three, we need a fourth one. And now instead of having height, here let's add weight. And here let's add eye color. Eye color. And here let's just add hair color. So it's surprising how much of this information is actually just available. Now instead of height, we will be adding weight. Instead of instead of height, we will be adding eye color. Okay, I hope that's correct. Instead of height, we will be adding hair color. Perfect. Let's run this and see what we are actually getting. Okay, so now, and as you can see, the app is fully loaded. If I go ahead and click on Angel, for example, we should be getting some information such as eye color, hair color, weight, and height. And as you can see, it just loads up pretty quickly. Again, remember, we'll be doing much more upgrades to this to make it look better. Let's go ahead and continue. Now, let's just go back to our main file over here. And we have at the moment now, as you can see, if we go back to the app just for a second, our everything is written in black. Sorry, everything is written inside of here in black, but again, we want it to be written in white. So I'm gonna go back and I'm going to check where that h stack is, and I will add this, and this will mean that everything inside of that will be added as white. Let's go ahead and continue. And now we're actually nearly done. What I will be adding now is the occupation, like the work, and other identities, and then relatives. Let's go ahead and add these things. So I will add a VStack. Again, make sure you're always setting up your alignment, and I will set my alignment to leading. That's what I usually do. And let's go ahead and remove anything after that because we don't need it. Despite what Xcode says, I'll add text, and I apologize, my dog just super active at the moment. And I'll write occupation, and inside of this one I will write base. So what does that character do for a living, and where does he actually do it? And oops, sorry. And so I will add i.occupation, I think. And after that, let's give it a font weight. So you can probably see a theme here that every title is usually just in bold. And this one will actually have, oops, it should have i.work. Oh, just like this. And this should actually work. So let's go ahead, quickly run it and see what happens. And in the meantime, I'm just going to continue. Let's go ahead and add a padding. Okay, so you can see that we don't have an okay, I think I accidentally might have spelled it. Okay, so I did uh accidentally misspell it and I wrote occupation, but that's the right spelling, so that's why I'm just putting it here for now. By all means, make sure you spell it correctly. After that, let's go ahead and add a VStack. Oop, I have no idea what a VStop is. Anyway, let's add a VStack. And this time we don't need padding, thank God. And what we're going to be adding is now text. And we're going to have other identities, so other names or other information of that character. We're going to be adding .font, and we're going to give it a large title. We're also going to give it a font weight of being bold. Perfect. After that, what I will be adding is another text, and I will simply say i.aliases. Now this is the aliases, so this is actually a pretty big file. It's pretty much everything. Yeah, everything included, everything that I'm highlighting right now is going to be displayed on the screen. So all of your alliances. Again, if there's any spelling mistakes, it will just not work. And we can add padding. Finally, and that means we would have finished the app, is another VStack. And this one will contain the relatives of that character. So we can simply say relatives dot font dot large title dot font. Oh, sorry, what am I doing? Dot large, okay, and then dot font weight, and our font weight is going to be bold. Perfect. So we have our relatives here. After that, we're going to actually display the relatives by saying I dot relatives. Perfect. And again, make sure you add your padding. Okay, perfect. So we are actually displaying all the information we want to display, but now there's one more thing to do, and that is to make sure everything actually looks presentable and good. So I'm going to add a background, and the background here is going to be white, and I'll give it a corner radius of 12. Let's give it some padding, and after that, let's go ahead and say corner. So let's actually give everything a corner radius. I'll simply say corner radius 12 dot padding, and just give it a second for everything to work properly. Okay, so the app finally loaded, and now if I click on a character, as you can see, we have everything presented properly. We have the name, we have the strength, we have the gender, we have everything you can think of. And as you can see, we even have the occupation, the base, other identities. Look at all these names. We have the relatives. So everything is pretty good presented. Let's try a couple of different characters. Let's try something like, I'm not sure, Ammo. And as you can see, we have his first name, race. He doesn't have any other identities or anything like that. Let's try Atlas. And here we have the race. We have other identities properly displayed, and we have relatives as well as some information such as the hair color, weight, height, and you can name anything. So this was pretty much it in this episode. You learn how to create a complete app from scratch, which contains all these characters. Now these are 500 characters. There is no app on the App Store that has this much until this app gets published. And yes, you heard that right. So at the moment, this app is actually being reviewed in the App Store. So keep checking the description below to see if this app has actually been uploaded. And if it has been uploaded, please support this channel by simply downloading that application. I will leave the description down below if it actually gets approved. Thank you for watching this episode. Please leave a like, leave a comment, let me know exactly whether or not you actually enjoyed this episode or whether it wasted your time. If you didn't like it, leave a dislike. If you really hated it, leave a comment and explain exactly why you hated it and how I can do better next time. Without taking too much of your time, thanks so much for watching and have a good day.